Hey, y'all, and thanks for being here. Now, before we start, just a quick note this is fiction. Even when it feels real, it isn't. Now, some of it does come from real places. I live in McNess, real feelings, and real moments. So I hope that you take pieces of this book and create what you need from it. All right, let's begin. Every year since Sam was 12, one day a year, she's had an exceptionally restless night. And some years nothing happens. She wakes up, gets her breakfast, everything proceeds as normal. But every few years, she wakes up somewhere else. She wakes up as a different version of herself in a different time. Tonight is that night. She can feel it in her bones, and she has the cassette tape to prove it. She's not sure where she's going or when she's going, but she knows everything is going to be different when she wakes up. This is Mixtapes to Myself. And this is how it all begins for Sammy. Introduction. Sam was in her little nest of a bed, being roused from her sleep by a small paw just barely brushing the tip of her nose. She opened her eyes to see the black and caramel face of her tortie cat, Blue. Her amber eyes blinked sleepily, and Sam instinctively lifted her top arm so Blue could climb inside the little tent the blankets made. She turned and placed her front paws on Sam's bottom arm and settled in. Sam kissed Blue's head, and she felt Blue curl further into her body. Sam hadn't slept through the night in years, and the fact that McNess never seemed to rest didn't help anything. She lay there quietly listening to the sounds of the traffic from the street below, while trying to adjust herself to help the twinge growing in her hip from sleeping on her side, which she knew she shouldn't do. There was something in the air, and she realized as she lay there, all four cats were curled up around her. They only seemed to do this when something was awry or when Sam was sick. At the risk of disturbing Blue, he reached over her to look at her phone and saw it was 1:05 in the morning. Was running her fingers under Blue's chin, was purring in the quiet way she did, wondering about the feeling she had in the pit of her stomach. When she realized what today was, she almost shot up, but instinct kept her motionless. Years of living with cats will do that to a person. She had 5 mixtapes hidden in the back of her closet, all marked by a year: 1999, 2004, 2008, 2014, 2020. The last one, from 2020, had recorded a day in the life of Sam at 37. They were proof that it happened, and proof it was happening again. She felt the hairs on her arms stand up as a chill crawled through her body. The day she had lived through was May 16th, 2024. But the version of Sam who had lived through it was not her in this bed right now. She remembered living it, remembered recording the cassette tape. But that was 4 years ago, and she was 33. But if the pattern continued, her former self would be here by morning, waking up surrounded by her cats with the surprise addition of Banshee. A very quick author's note. The story is entirely fictional, with the exception of the cats and the hip pain. The hip pain is real. I do like to sleep on my side, and it does cause twinges in my hip muscles. It hurts. However, Sam wasn't sure what the future had in store for her during this visit. Each time it had happened before, she had jumped into a future version of herself, and honestly, the last time had broken something inside of her. She really wasn't sure what she would be jumping into this time, and she was emotionally exhausted just by thinking about it. Blue chirped at her then, stretching her paw out to lay on the back of Sam's now very still hand. She started to absent-mindedly stroke her head again, wondering what would lie ahead for her today. Certain jumps in the future had brought her clarity, but some of them had left her completely emotionally drained. She looked at Blue, wishing she could have a preview of what was to come, but knowing that there was no stopping the inevitable. Well, she paused. Blue blinked up at her. Gotta have faith, right? Who knows, she thought to herself, in the hopes of willing it into reality. Maybe this could be fun. She felt Teddy stretch and heard his soft meow as his body extended, and heard the small trill of Banshee at her feet. She felt Sage lay his head next to hers as she herself stretched onto her back, Blue still curled into the crook of her arm. She was only 12 years old at that summer camp in Maine when the first jump happened. She had been so young, so full of beans, as her grandma would say. Closed her eyes, exploring the beautiful green forest and the briny smelling coastal tide pools of her past beanie self on the back of her eyelids like a movie. She slowly drifted back to sleep, knowing that where she would wake up was a mystery, but hoping, almost praying, that at least this time she wouldn't end up losing anyone else that she loved. Another, more somber author's note. I am deeply saddened for Sam at the mention of the loss of someone she loves. This loss does not have to mean death, but we have all lost people throughout our lives. Alas, we must go on. We must continue, both in our lives and within the story. Now we change tones entirely as we travel back to where it all began, when Sam was 12 years old. Welcome. This is where it all begins for Sammy. Let's get back to where it all started. Chapter 1. Sam goes to camp. Sam had barely slept a wink and found herself instead staring at the ceiling with wide, excited eyes. This weekend, the elementary schools in her town were running a camping trip, and she was going with her dad. She was enamored with the endless romantic possibilities of the weekend. She was young, but her spirit had always been one of hopeless romanticism. She had never been camping before, but seemed like the perfect opportunity to be the damsel in distress that she had seen on her television screen. She had seen young women in the movies seeking out the assistance of a handsome stranger, or finding herself in a daring situation and proving her moxie to the shock and approval of a strapping young man who doubted her nerve and spirit. What, she thought to herself, could be more romantic than hiking through the woods, or sleeping under the stars, or roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire? Plus, she had gone to school with the same 20 kids since she was in kindergarten. But this trip would have all the kids from all 4 elementary schools. That meant that she would meet new people who didn't know her. So they didn't know that she was a dork, or the smart kid, or the musical one. She could be whoever she wanted to be this weekend. The sun peeked through her curtains, and she flew out of bed as if she was spring-loaded. She hit the ground running and started frantically getting dressed. She chose the coolest outfit she could muster. A pair of her favorite jeans with a long-sleeved shirt and her favorite t-shirt with the puff paint wolves on it. She fondly remembered picking it out at the Cherokee Reservation with her mama last summer. She looked in her bureau mirror and nodded approvingly. Looking good, she told her reflection as she gave it 2 thumbs up. We are going to be so cool this weekend. She ran a brush through her hair frantically and then grabbed her favorite hat, denim bucket hat with Scooby-Doo on it. She had already packed her bag in the whirlwind of excitement, so all she had to do was grab her purple duffel and make her way downstairs. Another author's note. This was based in truth, because although I lost the Scooby-Doo hat years ago, I still have the wolf shirt, as you can see. And I did buy this with my memo years and years ago when I was young. A heavenly shout out to my memo, who was with me when I bought it and whose pound cake recipe is still unmatched in this world. Anyone who argues with that, although I'm pretty sure everyone thinks that their mother or grandmother or great-grandmother or auntie or someone else has the best. That's just called our own reality. Okay, on with it. As we said, it was still early, and the sun had only just barely shown its glow. But her mother was sitting at the kitchen table quietly with a cup of coffee already. Sam was frequently told that she looked like her mom, despite genuinely looking like a cookie-cutter copy of her father. This was due to her parents looking vaguely similar. They both had brown hair, and their face shapes were very similar too. But her mother had these big, beautiful blue eyes, which had skipped Sam and went to her little sister instead. The ashy brown hair that she inherited from her dad had also skipped her sister, as she was instead the only platinum blonde in the family. Sam had tried to tease her sister once and say that they had found her in a basket and she was adopted. Her mother had cackled and then did a side-by-side comparison of a picture of herself when she was young and Sam's sister. And they could have genuinely been twins. There was no argument that both of their children were undeniably theirs. You're up early, her mom said through her sips on her coffee mug, a smirk on her face. Sam was smiling from ear to ear and nodded emphatically. I'm just so excited. I think this is going to be the best weekend ever, Sam said, almost too loudly for this hour of the morning. Her mom's eyebrow cocked at the sentence, and she let out a low chuckle as she shook her head. I hate to tell you, Sammy, but I think you're in for a rude awakening, she said. Sam's face was quizzical. Without having to ask the question, her mom continued, still chuckling. Sammy, you hate bugs. You don't like being too hot or too cold. And I've never seen a bed outside of a magazine with so many pillows. She started chuckling again at the last part of her statement. Her family had a tendency to unabashedly laugh at their own jokes. Shame be damned. Mom, she said, drawing her mother's title out as long as she could in her exasperation. You're wrong. I'm going to be making new friends and exploring nature and learning about plants and animals. And she paused, trying to think of more positives. And all that stuff. But can you think of anything cooler than sleeping under the stars? Her mom grabbed her coffee cup and started towards the living room, probably to turn on the news and look at the state of things. Firstly, she said, you're sleeping in cabins. And then, before passing Sam, she pushed her hair out of her face and affectionately, with a tinge of sarcasm, her mom said, and yes, sleeping in your own warm, comfortable bed would be much better than sleeping in the woods in a bunk. And she walked away, cackling lightly. Sam rolled her eyes while she listened to her mom's retreating laughter. She went to the pantry and pulled out a bowl and a box of O's. She grabbed a glass milk bottle out of the fridge. Pouring her cereal and milk into the bowl, she put everything back and then grabbed a spoon. She trudged towards the sound of the TV, sat down, asked her mom if her dad had gotten up yet while she shoveled cereal into her face. No, he just got home from work a few hours ago, so I'm letting him sleep until he absolutely has to get up, her mom explained, not looking away from the television. Sam nodded, knowing that her dad had been working weird overnight shifts for a few years, and he was making a huge effort by coming with her this weekend. While she wasn't super excited that she would have a parent watching her every move in the woods this weekend, she was so relieved that it was her dad and not her mom. Her mother was an eagle-eyed oracle who could see every move you made. There was nothing that got past her mother, no matter how sneaky Sam thought that she was. Her dad, however, was not that. Her dad had never been as big on rules, so she was sure she would have some leeway and, in turn, the best weekend humanly possible. So there was more of a chance at this point for her to fall madly in love with a lumberjack or something. Another author's note. In the story, when Sam says that her mother was an eagle-eyed oracle, that is pulled from reality, or at least my conception of reality when I was younger. My mother was indeed an eagle-eyed oracle, or so I thought. I genuinely thought she was a walking crystal ball, and she could see all, including the depths of my soul. The story goes, and this is how she tricked me for many, many years. I was tasked with walking home from the bus stop by myself, and the bus dropped us off at an ice cream stand at Christmas time. I say Christmas time because this is integral to the story. They sell Christmas trees at this ice cream stand. So there were Christmas trees in a section of the parking lot. On the other side, there was a one-way street, a little triangle, and then another one-way street moving up. So I walked to the one-way street, and I looked both ways, and I crossed to the triangle. And I got to the other one way, and I looked both ways, and I crossed to the parking lot of a business. In the business parking lot, I went to the sidewalk, traipsed past the mailbox and the second business, carefully up to the sidewalk in front of my neighbor's house. At the shared driveway, I looked both ways again, and then opened the porch door, and then walked into my house. At the kitchen table was my mother. She turned. "How was your day, sweetheart?" And I said, "It was lovely." She said, looking me directly in the eye, "I really enjoyed that you looked both ways, both one-way streets." And I thought, how could she know? I found out years later that she had been hiding in the Christmas trees and had run through the back of the businesses, over my neighbor's fence, through their backyard and our backyard, into the back door, and then sat down. Little did young me understand or know, because she must have been glistening at the kitchen table, and I did not see. So for years, I thought she could just everything. "When do we have to be at school?" Sam asked her mom through a mouthful of crunching cereal. "You have to be there about 8, so I'll wake your dad in an hour or so," her mom said before taking another sip of her coffee. Her eyes were on the TV, but even while sitting still, her mom seemed to emanate a constant movement and energy. They were similar in that sense. And their bodies were supposed to be relaxed. Their minds were in constant, almost mechanical motion. Sam had always compared it to a hamster on a wheel that never stopped running. Or like a troll doll in a My Little Pony constantly fighting for dominance. Even right now, her head was in a cloudy dream world where she was going to be swept off her feet by some unknown boy from another school in town. They would fall in love and then go to high school in town together, go to prom, go to college, get good jobs, get married, and live happily ever after in a beautiful house with a big oak tree in the yard with a swing hanging from a sturdy branch. She scooped the last of her cereal in her gob and whispered internally, "This is going to be the best weekend ever," like it was a prayer to the heavens. An hour later, her mom went to wake up her dad, and Sam grabbed her duffel bag and placed it next to the door excitedly. She put her bowl and spoon in the sink and then just sat at the kitchen table, her legs bouncing in anxious excitement. One of Sam's favorite things in the world was watching her dad come down after waking up. It was kind of like watching Frankenstein's monster come to life for the first time, and she giggled every single time. Her parents were the perfect example of polar opposites who just happened to end up together. Her mom had always had trouble sleeping, and her mind never stopped, always up at the crack of dawn. Her dad could relax anywhere and could fall asleep literally anywhere, anytime, no matter what. He was also not a morning person. He came shuffling down the stairs behind her mom, and when he heard Sam's sunshiny, "Good morning," he grunted and sleepily mumbled, "Good morning," which was as close to the words he could muster this early sans coffee. Her mom handed him a coffee cup, and he sipped it gratefully. Sam started talking almost immediately about how they needed to leave soon and how excited she was and all the things they would be doing this weekend. Her dad's eyes peered at her from over the coffee cup that he was now taking heartier sips from, and he smirked and grunted at her in understanding. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He kissed her mom on the cheek and thanked her for the coffee, which he then brought upstairs with him so he could get dressed and grab his own weekend bag. Sam was practically vibrating with excitement, and her mom patted her shoulder, which Sam interpreted as trying to pass on physically some of her patience. Within half an hour, Sam and her dad were in the car on their way to school. Sam was looking out the car window and wondering what kind of grand adventures she would be getting into during this trip. Her imagination was running amok in her own head. "What are you thinking over there?" her dad asked as he was driving towards the school. Sam looked over at him. "What if we see a moose?" she practically shouted, her voice rising in pitch with every word. The shock on her dad's face was momentary, but then he burst into hysterical laughter. "That is not what I thought you were going to say," he chuckled. Sam's eyes were wide with the possibility of things she might see or feel or experience this weekend. She was so excited to see where the journey was going to take them. They pulled into the school parking lot, and her dad found a spot. Sam could barely wait for the car to stop before she threw the door open and leapt out. She yanked the back door open and threw her duffel bag on her shoulder, walking swiftly towards the group gathered around the big yellow school bus. Mrs. Taylor was standing there, checking kids off on her clipboard, and smiled her toothy grin when she saw Sam practically running towards the bus. "Good morning, Sammy," she said as Sam ran towards her, looking like a little bird ready to be fed. "You look very excited for the weekend," she said with a laugh while Sam nodded emphatically. "Well, go ahead and climb on the bus and find a seat. We're just waiting for a few more people and we'll be on the way to the campground." Sam nodded again, and without even looking back for her dad, she climbed onto the bus and jumped into a seat somewhere in the middle. Oh, she was clutching her duffel bag as if it was a lifeboat to the popular people promised land, and thinking about the fact that she was starting a voyage that she was so sure would be life-changing. So sure that she could feel it. She could feel it deep in her young bones. A final and brief author's note. A shout out to Mrs. Taylor, who is a real person and was my teacher years and years ago, not on this trip, but a real person. And I am hoping upon hope that she watches this and enjoys the fact that she was the first teacher that I thought I need to add her to this book, and I hope she's okay with it. Mrs. Taylor, if you're not, I do apologize, and I will change it and re-record all of this. Adieu. Thanks, y'all, for joining me today. I hope you come back and see where the story takes Sam. Remember, and I will say this every week, I love y'all. Be kind, be safe. Most importantly, Go out and spread some sunshine. I'll see you next time. Bye.